Hello, this is Christian. In this video, we're going to refactor a navigation component we created earlier by using conditional rendering, loops, and state. But before we do the code, here is a review of what you're going to build or refactor. This is the navigation that contains some of the Bootstrap tag style sheets in here. And we're going to just mainly focus on this part in yellow here. As you can see, a bunch of LIs in here that added for, we have 4 navigation links in here. And we are going to basically use a loop to loop through an object, like you see in section number 1 here. Object contains these 3 things. I just give you a hint here. And of course, this is not the only way, but this is the way I would do it. And then you would check for an active key, or see if that key is false or true. And if it's true, then you turn on the active and also turn on this span tag here. Okay, this active attribute class will highlight this navigation menu like you see here. If you move to the flight list, then that should be highlighted and so on. And also this span tag here will show up only if you are on the current menu. So this is SR-only class. That's for screen readers only. So we're not going to see that unless you have a screen reader. Okay, so that's that. And to show you how to do that here, again, there's a couple ways to do it. And so you would store this in a state. The reason why, because we have to maintain, we need to be able to track and change this state, right? The false and true value. That's why it's in a state. Okay. Now, by doing this assignment, I hope it will kind of help you and give you a hint how to tackle number 2. This is a little bit more laborious work, but it's actually quite fun. And so you have to use this JSON data. I included here. It's in some flight data here. It has some fields in there already structured for you. You just use it. And I would recommend, storing that into a data, a model or data file, and then just import that in to make your code cleaner. Again, I'll show you how to do that in the navigation menu. And I put some notes in here saying that, by default, when you create your app, React uses a function component for your root component. So you want to convert that to a class component because we want to be able to track these data, right? And state, because state will change when we delete data, add things to the data, then those will be changed. So that's why you need to put into a state. Anything that needs to be tracked and modified or altered, then those should be added to the state property. Okay? And again, read this instruction here. If this doesn't make sense, then just let me know. I recommend here number 6. You can add the table right into the template in the app.json template file. That can get really long. So usually when you do some kind of work like this, you can break this out into a separate component. I mentioned here if you know how to do this, you can break into a child component called flight list, right? And then just pass the data to it, the state, and a function to be able to manipulate the state in the class that owns that state. Okay, and then in the child class, you can access this data through the props, but then through this .props if you're using a class component. If it's a function, then just drop the this. Okay, and then the last part on here, when you build a link, the link here refers to the edit button here. So when you do the edit button, it's going to take you to a link that will look something like this with a /edit/ID number. And this ID refers to the ID of the flight number here. In our example, we just put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It doesn't really matter, but you can put a different number just as long as they're unique. And you pass that ID, so when you do the edit, you know which one to edit. Okay? And the same thing with the delete here. So this is just a function to delete the particular record. You pass an ID to it. And later on, when we do the edit or the add, or not the add, the delete, the edit also need to reference that same ID to get the correct record. Okay, so without further ado, let's go and fix our navigation in the code. So I'm going to go here to the IDE. I'm using React, so I'm going to go to React here, open my src folder, and my index file. I need to modify that now because in the previous videos we did some demo and I put the app from the demo file. So I'm going to change this back to the original one and turn off my demo app now. So you can leave this as is. And all these things are here. If you don't want it, you can remove all these. Okay, just comments. So if you you just remove to make your code cleaner. Just do that and save that. Makes it cleaner. So this part we're done. I'm not going to touch this part here. And so I'm going to open my app.js file. And here I'm going to convert this to a class first because I want to retain state now. And I added my navigation menu. And so this whole part here, I will remove all these logo and all the stuff here, all the part in the header. So we'll leave the header tag. We'll remove everything there. And then, yeah. So we'll do that. And then you can then, yeah, put your content right in here. Okay, in the header, and you put your content right in here so that it works. And if this part doesn't look good, you can remove this too. You don't need that because that gives you the black background thing. And I think we may not need that. You can remove that. Well, let's see what that looks like. Okay, let me just save this and run the app first. Let's go to our terminal, go to React, and then my React. Yours will be flight app and npm start. And let's see what this looks like. We should have nothing in the body now because I removed the content here. But we'll see. And here we go. It's loading up. And you might have just a black screen with the nav and also the footer. So when you add the table into it, yeah, so the table will go right in here, but this is in the header area. That's why it's going to give you a dark background. And so we might want to remove that nav thing. I mean this class here. And I'm going to see what happens if I remove the class. I mean the header here. Well, I just want to see what it looks like. If I just keep the nav, what happens? Okay. So yeah, well, the navigation here is with the bottom here. So I'll leave that up to you, right? So you can do that here. I mean, if you put your content in here, things should show up. So you put like some data here, for example, and go back, and you see that it should go into the white space here. This white space can expand when you add your table. That is going to span down. That's why I leave it like that. So it's going to be white instead of the black background. But that's just a it's just a matter of taste. So you can leave it as it was, or leave like this. For my example, I'll just leave it like this. I'm not going to keep the header here. If you do, then you have to just to make it look nice, we'll keep it on. But later I might change it. All right, so now let's go back to the navigation. In here, and the components, I have a nav, and this is the nav you want to change. So I'm going to close this terminal here. All right, I mentioned that this is the part we want to clean up and fix. But first, before we do that, let's convert this to a class first. So class app, this will be extends the component. I'm going to have state, so I'm going to have a constructor, and make sure you pass the props to it, and that you pass the props to the super, just rules. And then inside here is a state, but let's just also fix the render function down here. And this whole thing needs to be inside the render function. Okay, so just right click and clean up. All right, now we had to have a state, so that state equals something. Okay, and then so in here I will have something like maybe nav data. It's point to something that's coming in. So what do I have for my navigation? And I should probably change these to say, about it and flight list and then delete. But for now, this is good enough. So I have those four things, right? The home page has a link and has the active to check, make sure it's an active one. So in my list, I could do something like this. It's an array. Well, yeah, it is an array, a list of just do this way. A list of menus, and I will just move this over. I'm going to show you what it looks like in a nicer layout. Okay, so The first one is going to be something like a maybe URL that goes to the home page. Is this slash. The second property is a text of the menu. So this will be home, and then active. The first one will be true by default. We'll make that true. Okay, so that's my first one, and then you can copy that 3-4 times, right? So the shortcut is just if you're using this IDE, Visual Studio Code, you press the Alt and the Shift key, and you press the up or down arrow key, doesn't matter, and it will duplicate that for you. Okay, just save time. So this will be all false, and you can do that as well, and false. Okay, oops. You notice I showed something here. It's a shortcut as well. If you click on it, if you press the Alt key, if you keep pressing those, and then keep clicking those, you can edit all those at one time. It's like false, like that. Okay. So now again, shortcut. So this will go to the About page. This is the flight list. So I'm going to just call it flights, and then here will be just add, and here add flight and flight list, and then about. Now the flight list, you can see it as soon as we load the home page, it shows it right away. For now, it's fine. Later on, we're going to move this to a separate URL when we learn about the routing. Okay, so this is my data, and then this is a state. So I need to pass this to the child component, which is the nav component here. Okay, so to do that, I'll just basically add another property called, I'll use the same name, nav data. It's assigned to the state, this state dot nav data. I'm passing this data to the child now. All right, so let's save that. So I'm pretty much done for this part here, except later on we add the other data, this JSON data. You come back here, you add the second part to this list. Okay, let's go to the nav. Now this one is a function component, which is okay for this for now. We need to add in the props. We need to receive that. And then now, if you see this part here, this is the one that we need to think about. So we either keep this or one of these. Now notice these are the same, so I'm going to drop all of these here. We keep just these two here. Okay, so you have two options, well, a couple options here. One is we can use a loop to render this if it's just the active. If it's not active, then we render this instead. That would be the easier way out. Okay, and we'll do that first, and then we'll change it and do the other way, a different way. So from here, I need to wrap this whole thing. It will return this or that. Remember, it follows the same rule that you must have a root element. You cannot just return a partial. Okay, it won't work. So I'll put the whole thing into the curly brace here, and then I need to loop this whole thing. Loop through the data, through the props called nav data, right? We call it that. And then I'm going to use the map to map it, loop it. And here is we pass the data to arrow function, and then your data goes right in here. Okay, so this part will actually go in here, but then yeah, it goes in here, but then you have to return. So I put a return statement here, and then you wrap this whole thing in the return. Right? It gets a little bit convoluted here, but this is how it should look. And I'm going to close this on the left side. So now either return this part or this part. Okay, I'm passing in the navigation data, so I need to pass in here two things. One is the actual data itself. You can call it whatever you want. Just call it data. It's just a variable name. And the second, as you can see, is the index. So we need to pass that. You can call it you can call it index. It doesn't matter. And then the index if we need it, because remember when you loop to a list like this, you always should add a key, unique key to each of these LIs. So the first thing I'm going to do is right here, I'm going to add a key to it. The key is coming from the index of the list. Basically, that's all. If you have a different kind of list, like if you go back here, you can add another attribute here. You can say, key, and put some number here, right? Some unique numbers, so you can track that, and you can use this as the key, which is actually better because it's always unique and it won't change, right? But if you use the index, then that's a problem because later on, when I delete something, then the index gets reshuffled or reindexed, and I might not get the same data. So that's not really preferred. You would actually use a key here. Okay, so for our example, this is fine for now. But in a real application, you want to use a unique key, like the key of a database table when you have a primary key. It's always unique. Okay, but at least you need something to make it unique so that it can track by React. All right, so I will do the same thing down here. I just copy this for this part down here. Okay, so either true or not true. Okay, so now I can then do my conditional because I'm using the else, if and else, then I need to use the conditional, right? So I would say if the data dot active is true, I can say if it's true like this, the question mark, right? This is the true part, else right here is the false part. Remember, you can only do one complete root element. If I take out some partial like this, it won't work. It will tell you it's all red down here, okay? And the same thing here. It must be one complete root. And I cannot do like partial either, either all or nothing in this case. It's like, okay, so that's why you have some limitations in how you use this. If this doesn't work, then you break it out into a different component, or you can do this separately in a function somewhere out in the class or in the space here. Okay, so now if it's true, then that, else that, and that's pretty much it. The only thing is that you have to do this twice, pretty much. Right, and I'll show you a different way how to do it a little bit later. So let's save this and see what happens. Save that, go to my page, and as you can see, it still works, right? How do we know that well, as you can see about here, because I did not change the text in the object. So it does show you that it does work. And if you press F12 just to make sure there's no error in the console, right? It's pretty clean, so we are good to go. Okay, so let's go back and change our data in the root here. So these will be about, I did change them. Maybe I did not change the other ones. Yeah, down here. The actual data needs to be, I forgot to update those. Okay, so we got that working. And then now the link will be set to not that one, but we need to move the whole thing and just put that into the curlies here. Data dot URL, that's what we call. The actual text will be data dot text. And then the same thing down here. So this is kind of get repeated, but we'll put down here. Okay, that's it. Save that. And if you look in the browser again, hopefully, well, some errors, typos. Okay, no red. Good, clean. Let's go and try again. So here we go. And then now it's correct. Okay, let me go exit out of this full screen so you can see the navigation. It goes to about. If you click flight, it goes to flight, and then and so on. So this does work. We just have to find out later on we learn about routing. We have to take care of the navigation and then load the correct data based on that route. So when we go to an app page, we need to turn this add link to be active and so on. So that's why that conditional rendering is important. So back in here, okay, so you can see how I did it in two ways. Another way is you can see that all I'm doing is just this should be different and this. Okay, so the conditional operator can be used inside here as well. So instead of doing this way, so you can say, well, I can probably, get rid of all of these and just use this part. And now I can say, instead of doing this here, I would just return this class or just the class without it, right? And so what I mean is like this whole thing here can be wrapped. Let me control and save that inside another conditional operator. So use the same thing as I did up here, but instead I do right in here only, and the rest I won't touch it, right? So I can say if the the data dot active, if that is true, I don't have to do this. If you don't want to, that's fine. Because I know it's conditional already, so it's true. Then return the true part, which is this one. It's active. Okay. Else, then just return the part that without the active, just that class. Right. So now I'm only doing this part of the class. And then everything here should work. And then what about this one here? Well, the same thing. I can use the conditional again. If it's active, then return the whole thing. Otherwise, return nothing. Right? Or since either all or nothing, then you can use the other conditional, which is the ampersand. So you can say if the, and I think this one I'm gonna have to wrap inside the curly as well. So I wrap that inside here as well, and I do this conditional test. I say if the data the active, if that is true, then return the true part. That's what it means, right? If this is true and this true, then also do this. So if you think about it, the logic here, this is called the short circuit. If you remember short circuit in programming, if this part is false, then the whole thing is false. You don't need to consider, right? If this is true, then since it's an AND, I must also evaluate the other expression. That's why this part gets evaluated. In this case, it will be rendered, because I'm not. This will be true, right? Or it will be displayed. If this is false, then nothing gets displayed. All right. So I save that, and I save it. Go to the browser, and you should see that it's still just working just fine. If I refresh it, okay. So just like before. So that's a second way to do it. And I'll keep it this one because it's a little bit shorter. Okay. And then clean up here a little bit and so on. All right. So if you look at this, we need to do something here for another step. Again, you can leave it as is, but I want to show you that from a standpoint of using React, you want to make things as minimal as possible, meaning each component should be really, really unique. So the navigation component is kind of large in this example here. So if you look at things here, anything here can be refactored, can be moved out to the own separate component, right? So this is a whole navigation component. If you look at this, you see, I was like, well, there is a button thing here. What is this one for? If you look at this, it says this is the nav bar responsive. That is the it's like the mobile part. Let me show you. So over here, when I shrink my navigation, as you can see to something like this, you see the little drop down. That is this button here. Okay, so when you it's because it's responsive, and then we expand that, it goes back to the regular bar. So that alone can be taken out into its own component. So why don't we do that? And I can put it above here, just easier to see. You can say a function. You can put that out here, or you can put it right inside here. It's fine too, because maybe we'll do that. Okay, put inside a function. Why? Just because, right? Oh, I mean, like because it belongs to this component. Well, that's gonna look ugly. Well, it really depends. It doesn't matter. Okay, you can put it here or not. Doesn't matter, because the nav is all about the nav. So we can put out here. It's fine. If you put inside the nav, then it's private, right? You cannot export it out. But if you put outside it, you can export it if you want to. That's all. So put a function here. I'll just call it nav bar. Nav bar responsive. Kind of the same name, except use the function nav bar responsive function. It's a component, so make it call all caps. If it's just a regular function, you don't have to. But since it's a function, I want to make it the camel case. And then return, what am I returning? Returning the button, this whole thing. Okay, copy, cut that out, put it in here, and then just right click, go to format document, and I'm not passing any data to it, so this one is good as is. And then now in its place, I will go back and then put the navbar responsive, should put a button here. So that takes care of that. Now it looks a little bit leaner, right? So now I have separated a code into its own very unique finite component, just for one thing only. It's a responsive button. So that's taken care of. Now this also can be refactored. See this whole thing here? This is the main navigation. So you can say main nav. That's fine too, but it is not the main nav because this whole thing is the main nav. This would be like the main menu. You can call that. So I will just move this out into another function out here, and I'll call this nav menu. That is the main menu. And then again, return something, right? Put a semicolon here. You see that I do that all the time because, you know, just you don't have to do it, but in this case, it's kind of common to do that. Just you know, it's the end of that return statement. So I will then drag this whole div thing from line 26 to 41, cut that out, and then move it inside that return statement. Right click, format. So we got that. And make sure we pass in the props, okay, because we're using the props to pass the data to it, this child component. So I'll put the props in here. This one we don't have to do because there's nothing passed to it. So then down here in its place, just like the other one, nav menu, we pass some data now. I need to pass in the props. The props here, I can't just say props. I don't want to call the same name. Remember, this is passed from the parent component, right? It passed from here in app as a nav data. So the props contains that. And so when I add access in the child component, I'll say props.nav data. So I'm going to do the same thing here. So nav data equal to the props.nav data. I'm just passing from the parent, from its parent to its child, so that it can be processed the same nav data in here. So when I pass it in, I have to change anything at all. It's already here, right? It's good to go. So now I just refactor my main navigation to have two child components, the nav responsive menu and then the main menu here. Okay, and if you save this now, go back to the browser, and if there are no errors, as you can see here, everything is fully functional as it was. And if you press F12 to inspect it, in the console it should be the same. And if you have this component here, if you click on it, you see the little DOM structure type over here. So in my app component, I have my nav and my footer. These are the same level, my two children. Inside the nav, I have my own response button, and I have my nav menu, which is that bar right there. Pretty cool, huh? So again, just make sure this is your React components. This is the actual DOM components menus. And we saw earlier that, you know, it's all in here. So there they are. Okay, let's see what else I need to look at before we are done here. Yeah, one last thing. Okay, so this part here looks good for now. If you need to change it to a function, a class, you can do that. But for now, I'll leave it as function because it doesn't do anything much other than just performing the navigation. Now back in the app here, so you add more state in here. If this is just 4 lines and not that bad, but usually this is kind of really makes your code really hard to maintain. So you want to clean this up a little bit. And this is also how you can do in part B. I'm going to take this out and put it to a separate file and import that in as data. All right, so let's go over here, and I recommend you to add another folder in here, not the components. We had that for the components, but right in here as well, add another folder. We call this the models for all your data store. So inside here, I have a class, another file. I'll call this the maybe navdata.js. Okay, and then here I would have something like constant nav data equals. Okay, and then if you go back to, I'm gonna close this, go to the app.js, is equal to this whole thing here. Yeah, so I'm just gonna basically copy this whole thing and put it right in here and refactor it, clean it. So there's my thing, and I can do an export down here. Export default nav data. Okay, you can do down here. You can just add right directly here. That's fine too. But you would do it down here. It's just easier to it's consistent. So export the nav data out to the app here. So then up here somewhere, I need to import it so I can use it. So nav data, that's what I call from the models folder and the nav data. And then right in here, this thing removed, replace it with just the nav data I imported. So now you see that my code is very much cleaner than before. Okay, and if you navigate to the file, the browser, it should still be fine. No errors, no problem here. Okay, the logo is not defined, just we're not using it, so you can remove that. But so I can just remove this logo here. But you see that now it's much cleaner, much shorter, because everything is now separated out. We move all the logic into their own space, all the data source into their own data, and the child component is, we restructure or we composed to, or decomposed in this case, to much smaller manageable components in their own components, and so forth. So this is how you would, do it in make it more efficient. This way. So in your assignment, part 2 will do something similar, except you having a different data you pass in here. So you just add to the current state here. So you can do it this way. Just put a comma here, right? And data is equal to whatever data is coming from. Okay, you can add that here. Or once you have this state, add one content. Another way is you can do this. You can say this dot state, dot data is equal to whatever data is you put over here. Okay, that's another option too. But you cannot do this by itself. You have to, initialize the state first. All right. So I hope this is helpful in kind of helping you solve the second problem. And again, if there's any questions at all, please do let me know. Thank you.